Schneider, the coordinator of student relationship management at Athabasca University. We have Brian Stewart, the executive program director, University of Alberta, and we have Shakar Kadava, CEO of Rethink 55, here to talk to you today about CRM, analytics, and students. Welcome.
Thanks very much. Just to review the presentation, I'm going to start, then Shaker's going to take over, and then Heidi will do, and then I'll come back. So if you see the movement, you won't get confused by what's happening any more than you will get confused by the conversation. Just before I start, if is anybody doing CRM stuff? You are? Okay, that's not bad. Okay, so there's some movement in this space. Okay, so you've heard that Heidi, myself, and Shaker are here. It's about students. This is what we're here for. I know we do research, but research is done through students, and that's how we all get to be where we are. So it's all about students, and that's the focus of everything we do. I bumped on higher education trends. Just do a few trends in terms of the environment, and then I'll do some Google trends after that. This is one that you may have seen many times. It's the inflation rate that you get that's going on, and you can see that higher education is about 4 times, this is American data, it's about 4 times the consumer price index. The data down here reveal the impact on median family incomes and so forth, and what you can see is that it's outstripping the ability of people to pay. What you're seeing is inflation rates that are unsustainable from the average family to be able to pay. Education is becoming an ever-increasing cost of getting it. And it's still a good bet. Education still yields, if you look at the statistics in terms of the yield to education, about those who take college, those who don't take college, and the payback, it's much better if you take a college degree. It still has a high degree of payback, but nonetheless, it's creating unsustainable burdens. This is really annoying. This is the debt load that's growing in Canada among students. And you can see that student rates, the lowest in Quebec, obviously because the Quebec rates are the lowest, but you can see the rates and the amount of students who are ending up having debt loads, and that's going to increase. That's only going to increase as time goes by. Debt loads, these are average. Some people are in the hundreds of thousands, some people are nothing, but these are average rates, and this is only going to get worse. In America, this is American data. This comes from the Horizon report, and if you look at it, you can see in the blue bar that it's increasing. You look at the blue bar and you can see it's going up in all cases. That's net tuition and fee revenue. That's what you're getting from students. The state and the state and federal is moving up and down places. Generally, it's reducing and students are paying for the debt. This is a slight shift. This is productivity data. And what this is telling you, if you look across from 76 to 11, essentially there's been no productivity gain. That's per 100 students, FTEs, a staff member, and you look at it and say, where's the productivity? You can imagine if computers were produced at this rate of productivity, how much a computer would now cost. This has been referred to as the bubble effect, and what it means is that because education isn't scaling, the costs of wages have to be through increased prices, and that's what's causing the pricing impact that we saw earlier. So do some Google trends. This is big data applied and just randomly using them. Turn University, interesting change in dynamic between 04 and 13. You can see that 04, advanced economies, very high in education, in university terms. 13, much less, and the growth is in developing economies. No idea, just that's what's happening. Can height, for some reason, people aren't Googling can height, I don't know about it, they don't need to. But for those doing the 214, they may want to boost the marketing. This one here is the higher education in Canada, reflective of the other one. It's going down. I have no explanation for these trends. These are just trends, but they do highlight what data can do for you in terms of highlighting some interesting statistics or interesting trends. We ran this against Jennifer Lopez because we're big fans of Jennifer Lopez. And you can see that she got through the Bennifer period and went through the Mark Anthony period, and you can just, very interesting trend. And higher education did not respond seemingly to the same trend. Learning analytics, this only started in this term, so the search term, you can see it's growing rapidly, and it's only going to increase as time goes by. So the use of data for learning in all its senses will just keep growing. And then there's the student relationship, which is what we're talking about today, and you can see that really the term didn't sort of hit itself until about 11, and now it's becoming a bit of a plateau, but it's increasing, so it's on the way up as well. So to move into the whole point of a CRM, there's a student-institution disconnect. This should be on the porticos of any administrative building in a university or college, because really, we don't do them an awful lot of favors. I mean, we almost expect them to know it before they come in. Like, we've got process mazes. I mean, even our own staff don't understand the processes, and we have students to figure it out. In fact, they tell us sometimes how it works. The information is not always accurate. We have lingua academica that, you know, only those who wrote it could ever understand what it means. Sometimes we overcompensate for our failure to communicate. And sometimes we have non-value-adding information that doesn't really tell much of anything. And it ends up where we grind them into despair so we can rebuild them. So we have to move from despair to hope. We've got to try and use the technologies, experiences we have to try and help the students to get in and do. So to identify just a couple of areas in terms of the problem. The CRM for education, traditionally up to recently, has been about the opening area. In other words, the initiation, the movement to enrollment has been really where it's focused. And that's mainly where CRMs have been focused, and they've been adopted from commercial enterprises and used in that space. And even some of the ones that are used in, you know, like CISs have been around the front end of the student life cycle. But they have to be at the whole student life cycle. You can't have a CRM that only deals with one aspect of it. It's got to be around the whole content of the student's life within an institution. So it must move right throughout the student life cycle. So the relationship management is more complex than the prospect management. It's deeper, it's longer, and you need to complete all of it, and you need to gather data throughout the student to be able to understand what they need to do and how they need to do it. So in terms of the strategic business drivers, given what we said in relation to the environment we find ourselves in, with the students tapped out and their ability to pay ever reducing, and funding either from federal or provincial declining, there's a requirement to diversify the revenue base. We also need to enhance retention and increase enrollment. Now, in terms of this, the retention is one of the biggest ones because, as I said, most focus has been on enrollment, but you can't do one without the other. There's no point in keep funneling people in if they're siphoning out, if they're just leaving, either through failure or through exhaustion, just not getting what they want. So you've got to do the whole thing, and these are the strategic drivers to help an institution become more successful. Now, I want to introduce a couple of concepts. The first concept I want to introduce is failure demand. And anybody do lean? Anybody looking at lean? You're doing lean? You may have met this. This came out of lean. This is out of Britain. And John Seddon has got this Vanguard method, which is very interesting because he's done it with public sector bodies in England. And what they do is he's looked at the reasons, particularly in call center studies, the reasons why we do what we do. And what he's found is that there's a huge amount of demand created from process failure. In other words, most of the activities that we spend in customer services are due to the fact that the processes don't work. So we patch them up with customer service. It's like products, you know, when the product quality isn't good, you've got a service department or whatever, and they keep fixing it, and the Maytag man, quality was so good he didn't need to do anything because the product was useful. Well, in public sector and in us, in the education sector, we spend an awful lot of time fixing the problems of our processes. So if you look at it like answering confusing instructions, I mean, they're not very clear at times, poorly articulated choices. We need advisors because sometimes it's not very clear. Otherwise, it is complex, so it's not that I'm saying you can do it automatically through decision trees, but we could do a better job of trying to advise people to be able to pick the program choices. Self-serve options. The wrong metrics is very interesting because, I mean, we look at metrics, especially in call center areas, about mean time to resolution. On the help desk, about mean time to resolution. I said, great, you know, we're down, fantastic. It's like, yeah, but trying to avoid the problem in the first place. Measuring how quick you solve it isn't necessarily addressing the issue. It's just telling you you're very good at addressing, you know, when it comes forward. So if you had the metric to say, how many problems have we avoided or you know, got rid of in the last while, that would be a much better metric than how you're resolving it. So answering to the wrong metrics can really drive the wrong processes and really drive the wrong solutions. And then the service improvements, we're very good, particularly in higher ed, at solving our problems, not the students' problems. We're very good at saying, we want to solve that because it's a problem for us. It's not the students' problem, they have a different problem, but we solve our problem. That's not responsive to them. Now, maybe a good thing to solve that problem, but it's not necessarily what should be the first priority that we need to do to improve what students want. The feedback loops, anything that you read about quality and the demo is all about feedback loops. That's how you improve. All the Kaizen stuff, all about feedback loops. One of the problems we have, and this is about the end-to-end as well, you can't have a feedback loop if you're focused narrowly. The feedback is too narrow. It solves a problem within a narrow boundary. The students' problems are end-to-end. They don't have a problem with just registry. They have a problem throughout their life cycle. They have a problem as they go to registry, maybe to one of the faculties, to help desk support, to whatever it happens to be. You need to analyze end to end. Don't solve a problem in a narrow focus or a narrow channel. So his work is very interesting, and I would recommend to use it because it is a different approach. And he does challenge many of your assumptions about how you, what we would call, make efficiencies in call centers. It's rather new. And this is just sort of that failure demand to our area. So you can see the percentages breaking down in terms of like progress chasing, where is it? What happened? I sent something a month ago, where is it? I don't know, because there's no visibility into the process and no one knows what they're doing. Registration exams and so forth. So you can see these are fixing failed processes. We're creating work for ourselves by fixing processes. And we would congratulate ourselves on how many students we service today. That we've increased the process through technology to handle even more students with their problems. And we think that's a good thing. And to some extent it is. But if you can avoid them phoning in the first place, or calling, or emailing, or chatting, it would be a much better solution. This is the other concept I want to talk about. So one, that was more or less on the engagement side of the retention. This is on the recruitment. And this is out of McKinsey. And I found it very interesting because most of us think in terms of the left-hand side, the funnel. And in most marketing, it's all about the funnel. You take a suspect to a prospect to a customer and down. That's what we normally associate. But they said it's more complex than that. It isn't linear sequential. It's cyclical and it's experiential. So what they say is, you've got the trigger point that consider, okay, so I'm going to buy a washing powder. So I evaluate. Well, maybe that's a bad one. I mean, you probably just go down and pick the closest one you to or go for price, but let's bear with the analogy. So you're going to buy a washing powder, you evaluate. You do some research, check it out, whatever, and then you buy it. Then you experience it for the next time you purchase. And then, if you like it, if the experience has been good, you stick with it. And it's called the loyalty loop. If you didn't like it, you'll go and evaluate other opportunities. This is very interesting in terms of, so it's not sequential, it's not a linear one where you just go. This is all the time. And what you want, what everybody wants, is the loyalty loop. Because what you want them to do is advocate. You want to, if you ask them, somebody asks them, what's your experience? You want them to say, fantastic, those are great, love it. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Because that builds positive word of mouth. The only word of mouth, interestingly enough, I think mostly would agree that a large majority, and this is data referencing the previous cyclical model, most people would say that word of mouth is a big thing for academics. I know at Athabasca University it was, because we asked students, how did you find out? And why did you come? Word of mouth was huge. And this is what they declare between developing markets and mature markets. Now, I wouldn't hold that the mature market for academia is as strong, likely to be where this is going. But I think there's a movement going to be away from the word of mouth to more intermediated by digital technology. So somewhere between here and here, I think is where academia is going. And this is the importance of digital technology in terms of the communication and in terms of why you want CRM, in terms of what you're going to learn about your students, so then you can communicate in a manner that's effective for them. So this to me is where we're going. As I said, I wouldn't say that's an endpoint, but I think we're moving towards that endpoint. So the reconnect. Just for a definition, this is constituent or customer student relationship management. So just for a definition, it's the technologies track, support, and measure student interactions. So that's sort of just, you know, what we're talking about. On the Gartner hype cycle, baby steps. We're there at the very beginning. So we got the mountain to climb, and then we come down the other side, and then we'll go to that plateau of effectiveness. It may not, it may go up quicker. They say it's a bit longer than it is. I think they're a bit slow. I think it's going to be a lot quicker than Gartner is saying, but hey, they're Gartner. And this is sort of one of the reasons why I would hold to that. Educause did a survey of technologies that people were going to buy, and 61% of schools said they were going to put a CRM in. So, you know, there's a lot of, and the reason they're doing it is not the full life cycle. The reason is enrollment. The reason is they want to get more students in because they're suffering on the tuition side. So, well, you know, sometimes you take what you can get and you move it forward, but they're not putting it in for life cycle, but hopefully they would, you know, as they go along. So, what I'm going to hand over to Shaker now in terms of Athabasca and to reveal some of their journey of how they moved along. Borrow your microphone.
Thanks for that, Brian. I just had a few questions. Just by a show of hands, how many of you folks have ever used a CRM or had a conceptual understanding of what a CRM was? Okay. And what we intend to do today is change that definition of CRM that you're aware of. The reason we're going to do that is because, you know, when we started going down the path of even understanding what CRM was, the generic industry term was used in the context of communications, marketing, recruitment, as Brian pointed out. And that's what we find in the products. But you look at any sector, doesn't matter if it's financial, doesn't matter if it's public sector, education. Customer relationship management is not just acquiring the customer. It's about customer loyalty, customer retention as well. So if you are doing a great job acquiring the customer, but sort of dropping the ball as soon as they are a customer, it's not really relationship management. And I think the products in the marketplace need to reflect that aspect as well. Also, how many of you folks ever felt that if I had that report, I would do, or my activities, my processes would be so much better if I had access to that data, had access to that report? Okay. And how many of you folks actually know exactly what's right and what's wrong in the context of your institution? Excellent.
Unanimous, I love that.
So I want to sort of play back some of the terms that Brian used in his presentation, diversifying the revenue base, you know, the decision journey, the word of mouth context, and also look at the CRM on the whole. So when we're talking about the key business drivers, we know the key business drivers are three things. You know, diversify the revenue base because of the current fiscal climate and possibly what's going to be a longer-term fiscal climate in the education sector. Secondly, we know that we need to increase retention because retention has a direct impact on recruitment, or at least somebody told us that. So we're going to, what we really need to look at here is that ability for trying to make the right decisions with absolutely no sort of funding. So doing a lot with nothing. And so in order to get there, what we do need is data. So it's sort of an evidence-based approach to decision making. So you are actually realizing that what you're going to be doing is using that little bit of money or a little bit of project resources that you have towards something that's almost guaranteed to deliver some results. The results may be small, but you need some sort of results. So when Athabasca, and I should probably use the mouse at some point. Thank you. So when it was probably 2007 when I started working with Athabasca University as a consultant. We were at a point where you know, there was no data, absolutely no data. There were data in disparate sources that were not being gathered because there's only 850 different sources of record in any institution for that matter. And the sort of decision making that was done was based off of, let's say, the student information system reports, or it was based off of the phone system reports. But you put this in perspective. when you're looking at a student that's probably on your website, going through your website and performing certain activities, transactions, looking at some information, and you're pulling out web analytics, what is the actual feedback loop that you have to say that your website served the purpose that it needed to? To me, one clear source is, why are they calling? So if every information that or that they wanted was on the website, they'd probably not be calling. So what I'm trying to get at is looking at data from multiple sources, aggregating them together to the best possible extent, because we know it's just not going to be possible to get all of that data together. What we're trying to do over the course of this process is start at the time that the student sends that first email, I'm interested in a Bachelor of Commerce program, or I'm interested in the MBA, and look at those interactions that happened, starting at that point, take them through the course of the life cycle once they become a student as well. So it's not just the aspect of sales or recruitment, it's also the aspect of retention or customer loyalty. So we'll track those interactions through the context of their life cycle as a student and beyond as well. By doing this, we know who our alumni are, we know what sort of experience, qualitative experience they had over the course of their life cycle to the best possible extent. And that would save a lot of phone calls from the development office to somebody that had a nasty experience asking for some sort of contribution back to the institution. And also what it would do is understand internally where the process breakdowns are. What is causing a person to walk up to the registrar's office 5 times asking for the same transcript request over a period of 20 days, and how many people does it go through before that request is served? So when we're looking at efficiency, when we're looking at process breakdowns, this sort of data is critical, absolutely useful. So when we started working with Athabasca University, we understood that what we're working with is we have no access to data. So the first thing that we got to do is look at where the data is being generated. So the data was being generated at these multiple channels that students are coming in through: phone, email, there was no web chat at the time, phone, email, in person, and so on. To make my life living hell, there was absolutely no sort of data that I could gather because of the fact that Athabasca University student base is all remote. So there are no defined channels through which I can start to accumulate data. So we created a streamlined channel to start to accumulate data. Because remember, there was a lot of data there, but it's sort of that garbage in, garbage out. We don't know what contributed to the data. So what we're going to do is streamline the inflow of data. And from that point onwards, we're going to enrich that data and look at making some intelligent analysis. So we did that with the phone to start off with, where we would start to see what are the patterns of students who are calling us, why are they calling us, where do they go, and once they actually go, what does the person on the other end do on their computer? So that was sort of that journey of a interaction that we were trying to map, which would then go back to the website and sort of say, can we provide this information on the website? Because you're all aware that the average cost of a call into, doesn't matter where you're located, ranges from $4 to $25. So what we need to look at is decreasing that cost and at the same time providing service in real time. And one way of providing service in real time is if the student went to the website and got the information that they wanted, they'd be self-serving. Oh, I skipped. So we finished that process, and we said we got the phone piece worked out. Now we have to look at the rest of the life cycle here. Excellent concept, but in reality, I was asked to find a solution that managed recruitment, managed the student life cycle, integrated with the student information system. They wanted single sign-on because you don't want to use another username, password. It also was sort of PCI compliant in the event that we wanted to offer some additional services and so on. And we turned to CRM, which is where probably a big part of our challenge started. So when we turned to CRM, we went to the market, we looked at the products that are out there. We did detailed reviews of the multiple vendors that were offering CRM solutions for higher education and those that were offering CRM solutions, period. We thought we'll make it work for higher education. And when we saw that, we saw a huge void because every product that we looked at served the purpose of recruitment, marketing, communications really well, and that's where it stopped. And so what we saw was a huge gap in a life cycle management solution. So In essence, a CRM solution is a student lifecycle management solution. The difference between a SIS and a CRM is just the fact that the student information system is the single source of truth. It must remain the single source of truth about student data, but it's a transactional entity. It's not an interaction management or a qualitative analysis of how the student experience was, and that's where the CRM comes into play. So when we realized that we did not have any such product in the market, I had my retirement hat on, and I said, well, if I make this work, maybe. So that's where gray matter came into the picture. And I'm not going to make this a sales pitch, so I'm going to keep it real sharp. But what we were trying to do was accomplish an end-to-end lifecycle management system that tracked every interaction that the student had workflow management, had information management, knowledge-based service request, potential mind-reading capability, all of that incorporated within the context of one system. And I actually...
That's what I asked for.
Yeah. So when Heidi asked for that, I sort of said, Heidi, you got to stop watching Iron Man movies. Jarvis is not real. and so we did that. And when we went down this path, we said, okay, so we can build the next Salesforce.com. Start from the ground up, build your next platform, or we can leave all of the the hard work with when it comes down to server balance, load balancing, enterprise grade software management and things like that to a big or actually a very small corporation called Microsoft. What we did was we took Microsoft Dynamics CRM 2011, stripped it down to its bare bones. The biggest advantage that we had with Microsoft Dynamics CRM was the fact that it's sort of like a software development. What was, in a sense, a higher education student lifecycle management solution. So you have the ability to manage your the engagement process, the process of inquiring, discovering that's happening by the students, the recruitment process, the reaching out, the follow-up, the contact management aspect, the workflows that go along with it, having the ability to create campaigns, mass emailing, and so on. But what was also critical was that we needed to integrate with student information systems. So the student information systems that we started with was Ellucian Banner, and now we're with PeopleSoft, a bunch of homegrown student information systems, and so on. What that let us do was create the student over here in the engagement and recruitment process. We're integrated with the student information system. So at some point, when the student becomes a student, we wait for the student information system to tell us that there is this student, John Doe, and there was a student here, John Doe. We do a duplicate matching, so therefore now we have a record of the student from the very start all the way to the end. And what we're also doing is not creating another record in the student information system, another record in the CRM. So it's one record that's traversing over the course of the life cycle. What this let us do is get a 360-degree view of what's happening with the student from the beginning while they're on campus, whether they're talking to IT, registrar, the library, doesn't matter where their interactions are, we're able to track all of these interactions over the course of that life cycle. And with that, I'll sort of pass it on to Heidi.
Sure. We'll see. I don't know if that's going to work, but anyway. Okay, good. So my role at Athabasca University when I began working with Shaker and with Brian was as the coordinator of the information center, and I was in the role of getting us started in moving forward our services at that point of contact for students. As Brian mentioned at the beginning, that idea of figuring out what it is that students are calling about, and we could tell you at off the top of our heads at the info center level that the students are calling about, they don't understand the processes around requesting exams, they don't understand what happens next once they've applied, and they can't get in touch with their tutor. So those are the things that we knew, but what are we going to do about it? As Brian said, we're expending a lot of energy servicing these problems, but not addressing them. So we undertook a start on that, down this process. So give you a little bit of background about Athabasca. We have over 40,000 students in more than 850 programs, or courses in 55 programs, 1,100 faculty and staff members in Athabasca, Edmonton, Calgary, and St. Albert. Our students are a little older than the traditional campus-based students. Average undergraduate age is around 29, graduate student age is about 39. Most of our students are working. 67% are women, 70% of our graduates are also first in family, and that's a big deal. These students don't come to the university experience with a support system that can help them navigate how this works. They need to be reaching out to us quite frequently, and they add the aspect of distance in there, and it's significant. It's a significant factor in a student's success. So we are our admission model of open makes for what I've termed a unique enrollment funnel, which was a particular challenge when we started looking at CRM systems that were specifically geared to that enrollment cycle. Well, ours is very wide, really shallow. Fill out an application, you're in. So we don't have that selective admissions process where we're working with a group of prospects through a process to narrow them down. So that didn't fit for us. Our students are exclusively served at a distance. We never get the opportunity for to make up for a poor service experience on the website or at a distance when the student gets on campus and, oh wow, look at the beautiful buildings and it's so cool here and I really like my roommate, blah, blah, blah. We don't have that. If we fail at offering service over those distance channels, we've probably lost that student. So we do multiple channels, phone primarily, web, through the learning management system, and through chat. Our staff are also very geographically separated. We have our main administrative service center in Athabasca, but we also have service units in Edmonton and Calgary that work as one unit. Or they didn't at first, but then we improved that. So where we were going with this was to try and figure out how we can better align our resources to improve that service to students at a distance. So we began, I'm going to go back a little bit here in that there's aspects of the service channels and how our staff were geographically separated. So, sorry, I'm skipping ahead in the slides to what I want to say later. I don't want to do twice, so okay. Yeah, I'll talk about it later. So our pilot for the CRM system was within the Faculty of Business. That was a sort of was a good pilot opportunity for us because of the way it was structured and the way that the faculty had already been delivering student service in sort of a contact center mediated model. A little bit more integrated than had been happening at the general level at the university otherwise. So administrative support, as I mentioned, is provided through the support center, and that provides service to both prospective and current students. The faculty had been using GWI and Lotus Notes as a framework for providing that service to students. We would create records of contacts with students and keep track that way and then route that work as appropriate. But GWI was reaching end of life and we needed something better. Plus, through our earlier work in our contact center project, we were recognizing that need to work more in a more integrated fashion. We couldn't afford, not just financially, but from a student service experience, to have student experience perspective, to have that disconnect between what a student's experience was in the Faculty of Business to what it was anywhere else that they happened to touch the university. So wanting to try and move in a more shared direction. So we piloted with the Gray Matter CRM to replace the aging system in the Faculty of Business, but it also allowed us that stepping stone to a more collaborative university-wide implementation. And this is the approach that we took in, or that we are working with through this project process. Started with streamlining the interactions. So if we're getting, as Shaker mentioned, identifying those multiple touch points and realizing that interactions are occurring across the university. What those are, we don't always know because they're being created in multiple pockets. So mapping where those interactions are occurring and then starting to streamline them to specific channels. Create your master data store, support those transactions, moving into, wait a minute, are our numbers backwards? I thought I fixed that. They are. Identifying your baseline is number 4. Then comparing that both inside and within the industry, set the benchmark. Then that allows you to go into that continual improvement loop. Oop. I sort of already spoke about this. So looking at those interactions, streamlining the channels, creating that data store. Yeah, just a little more detail, but step in if you want to add.
Okay, can I add to that, Heidi? Okay, what we were trying to do here was, again, not start at the technology, but look at the actual business case, look at what we're trying to solve from a business perspective, and then drive the technology at the very end. So through the process of what we called as align, define, refine, what we were trying to do was get the framework to understand where the problems are, look at the problems, and then fix the problems. So what we've in a sense done is identify those moments of truth. Are you familiar with the term moments of truth? The term moments of truth refers to anywhere within the context of a customer's life cycle that can impact the experience of the customer. So any interaction that the customer has with an organization is a moment of truth. So we were identifying what those moments of truth are, looking at the channels that we required to gather data at those moments of truth, and then create a data store based on what we get from Student Information System, Active Directory, CAS, whatever other data sources that we may have on campus. Once we did that, we looked at that data and we sort of said, we're going to identify, A, how are we doing? We get these reports that we didn't have previously, we're going to know how we're doing. B, set targets. And one of the critical things that Heidi and I work with was, okay, so we're going to set a target that's not going to be a big, hairy, audacious goal, except all the more because we know we're dealing with the big change management issue across campus. So what we have to be cognizant of is identifying practical goals with regards to where we want to go and enhance those goals as we move along. So once we set those targets, you sort of make minor tweaks and changes to your processes, your technology, and then look at how you're gearing up against those sort of targets. The other critical piece is when I started down this path, I sort of said, CRM is a disruptive, pervasive, but a positive technology transformation. So what we're going to need here is executive support. We cannot start with a frontline unit that wants to do this without having the executives buy in to the process, because sometimes they're going to have to make that tough call saying, I don't care, this is the way it's done. We have to make that tough call. So what we started with was we engaged the executives in the process of identifying the service vision. Where do you want to be when you grow up, for lack of a better word? How are you going to meet that vision? And who does what and when? So it's a vision, strategy, structure, and then the technology. That was the approach that we basically took with it.
Thanks, that's better than I was going to say it. So our results in our pilot is, and we went within the first, I can't remember the time frame here, but 80,000.
That was in 4 months. So 80,000 interactions in 4 months, December, and we actually made the same presentation in April, so 4 months.
Okay, so the pilot really validated for us what our requirements were going to be to expand to the enterprise. And we are going to be proceeding with adopting the system to replace what we've been using in pockets with Heat and IntelliResponse, provide that contact center support and CRM functionality we are moving into that area where we're going to be recording students' interactions and classifying them so that we can get to that sense of having that visibility into the student's life cycle.
Also, to put this in perspective, when we say 80,000 unique interactions, remember that every email probably causes 3 more emails between the number of replies, or 5 or 7, whatever that case is. And we know what those numbers are. We know how many interactions happen per unique email, for lack of so that number could probably be 250,000 when you actually look at the perspective of how many times did I talk to the student in 4 months.
So, and we've got our business case and our project plan to be rolling this out to across our service units by next fall, to be completing that frontline rollout. So the big wins for us have been that ability to foster conversion of students across multiple channels. Excuse me, I think I'm choking. And enabling that business renewal for us through that evidence-based approach. And I know we're running short of time, so I don't want to yammer on too far.
Okay.
So looking at making some significant savings for us, though.
Okay, I'll do a quick wrap here in terms of the lessons learned. If you look at it, the CRM technology is, as Shaker said, it's strategic. It's not something you throw together. You've got to deeply think about what you're trying to do, and it starts with a service vision. What do you want to end up with the student? Where do you want to be? Because you don't start this, well, you can, I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't do it that way, but it's much better if you start with a vision and go from there, because you do the executive on side. Your business case will have to have at least some qualitative and quantitative expectations of where you're going to be. It fosters across departmental collaboration because the data is gathering across and the end-to-end life cycle of the student experience. It requires a solid foundation of data gathering. This was a real problem. We introduced a call center, as Shaker said, when he started joining us, working in Athabasca when I was there. At the time, there was nothing in the call center. They had no data gathering whatsoever. There was nothing. We put heat and tell response in because that allowed us to at least track those you need it to each step. So if people aren't going to gather the data, then you've got nothing. You've got erroneous information, which is likely to mislead you. You must make sure that the student information is being gathered correctly. That means that you want to make sure it's easy to gather. Don't put in horrendous amounts of checkpoints and everything. Otherwise, you won't get it because people just, will fake it because it's too egregious to do so. And it allows the evidence-based approach, and this is critical in terms of the earlier issues that we brought up in terms of the recruitment and retention. It allows you to look at the patterns. It allows you to find where the roadblocks are in your process. Because one of the key things is you don't necessarily know those until you see, and you can see the amount of data around a particular process, and you see the huge amounts of connection points. You say, well, there's something wrong there. That's a roadblock. Now, initially you may throw the resources at it to solve it, but ultimately you have to break through the roadblock, and this allows you to do it. And again, the align, define, refine approach creates the strategy in place that we found that very useful. It was a very good framework for implementation because it allows you to slowly build and not have to hit the home run first. It allows you to do base hits and move forward. And that's about it from the presentation side. So we'll do a Q&A if anybody has any. Yes, Bear.
In a tweet or less, what would you say are the defining differences between the CRM solution that you're looking at here built on Microsoft Dynamics and Illusion's recruiter built on Microsoft?
Lifecycle.
So that's the recruitment.
Exactly, lifecycle, and that's a quick tweet.
That's a very quick tweet.
Yes.
Okay, in line format.
Instagram.
Yes.
Have you seen a big difference in retention from before and after this was implemented?
To be quite honest, those results aren't in because mainly we'd be looking at process. And in 4 months, we don't have enough data to look at that. Also, in terms of, it's going to be very hard because it's like all marketing, 50% of my marketing dollars, in which 50% was effective. It's the same sort of thing. You don't know because, with Athabasca University, there's an awful lot of other institutions going online with their business programs, and that will threaten Athabasca. So it's one of those things where you sort of have to do it, but you don't know if it's really working in that sense. So we don't know yet, but I think over time, you'll be able to do some funnel analysis. We'll be able to see, okay, is the process yielding more as they move through? So you'd be able to say, I don't know if we're getting more absolutely, but relatively we can see them moving through the process, so we're not dropping out.
And one thing I'd add there is that okay, well, I'll grab one. We have a general understanding of where some of our big gaps are, as I mentioned, with that idea of first and family students and what their particular risks are. We now have far more robust set of tools to be able to do things there and implement new processes that we didn't have before to provide better just-in-time service and more preventative type of action, which we could project will improve retention in those certain areas, and then we'd be looking at that. But as Brian mentioned, because it's very multifaceted, it's correlation is not causation, but we'd hope to see significant improvements to things that we know are problems and quantify those in appropriate ways.
I can give you some results. Again, not saying that these are retention related, but it's almost common sense to a certain extent. When we started at those streamlining interactions bit, we started with the phone system. We didn't know where we were doing. We looked at some records for the first couple of months. We knew we were dropping 1 in 3 calls, 33% abandon rate. So it could have been multiple things, students just calling the wrong number or whatever be the case, but we were dropping 1 in 3 calls. And then there was the whole aspect of service level. So the service level that I had to work with was 100% of the calls had to be answered within 60 seconds. That was the benchmark. Why? I didn't know. But that's basically what I was working with. And the number of times that the information center, the department that Heidi used to head, was meeting that was less than 50%. And that's not a bad thing. What I'm trying to get at is 2 things. One is when you set a target, this evidence-based approach to setting that target, and B is actually doing the right things to get to that target as well. So after we streamlined, tweaked, we did a bunch of things with the phone system, trying to make sure they got to the right person quicker, faster, and so on. I think for 2 quarters in a row, we were at less than 10% abandon rate from what was 33%. We were close to 70 to 80% in terms of service level, and then that was also an impetus for us to sort of say, well, does it really matter if it's 100% of the calls are answered within 60 seconds? Is that going to define my
Actually, interesting enough, following in the footsteps, we're implementing Sugar CRM as our vehicle. Have you guys considered Sugar CRM or pros and cons?
Even though I have my product that I built, I will, it's not about the technology. Technology can be made to work for you. I think what you need to be looking at is more the life cycle aspect of it. I mean, I might say that we do it better, but at the same time, it's, I'm sure that Sugar, being an open source platform, being sort of that, the business applications engine that it is, as long as you're taking that approach saying that we don't stop at the recruitment, we are going to be looking at that student life cycle, which may then present a set of technology challenges, be it in terms of integration and so on. But nevertheless, at least if you're going through the life cycle, I'm sure that there should be no.
I'd actually add a little bit to that too. I think that would be the biggest message I would send, that if you're talking about CRM, implementing CRM, you have to understand it as it's not the technology. The technology enables you to undertake a strategy of student relationship management. That how are you going to be applying this? The tool is just the thing that helps. So
we did consider it because we did this, and one of the reasons we didn't go there was simply that you're trying to externalize support for it, and we're heavily, Athabasca is heavily open source, and there's an ethic of open source in the institution. And what I was trying to do is to say, on the learning side, no issue. I think that's part of the game. It should be open source. On the administrative side, it was like, we don't need to be good at administration. Athabasca we don't need to have the best finance system, the best HR system, the best student information system. We need to use those technologies, but we don't need to own them and develop them, except insofar as they support the mission. So part of the reason was we just needed to sort of push it out, and we felt that going with this was a better solution for us at the time. But as Sika said, there's a million ways you can pick technology, and it all depends on your infrastructure and the skill sets of your people.
Well,
cutting into great time.
Yeah.
But, thank you so much.
Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you.